Ekscelence, člani inštituta IFIMES, dame in gospodje, dragi prijatelji. Danes gostimo gospoda Hakija Bazija, programskega direktorja za Zahodni Balkan, The Rockefeller Brothers Fund, New York, ki bo imel predavanje z naslovom Balkan od tranzitne poti do integralnega dela Evrope. Med nami je i nekdanji predsednik Republike Hrvaške, gospod Stjepan Mesić, ki je hkrati častni predsednik Mednarodnega inštituta IFIMES in bi ga posebej pozdravili. Hakija Bazi je programski direktor za Zahodni Balkan pri Rockefeller Brothers Fund iz New Yorka, ZDA. Ima poglobljeno znanje in delovne izkušnje z področja civilne družbe na Balkanu, še posebej v prihodnjem obdobju, saj je razvijal in izvedel veliko programov z tega področja. V svojem predavanju bo Hakija Bazi predstavil svoj pogled na trenutno situacijo na Zahodnem Balkanu in na prihodnost tega dela Evrope. Predavanje bo potekalo v angleščini, po predavanju bo sledil pogovor, ki ga bo vodil kolega Bahtjar Aljav in jaz. Your Excellencies, members of the IFIMES Council, members of the IFIMES, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, allow me to welcome you in the name of the International Institute for Middle East and Balkan Studies, IFIMES, from Ljubljana, the organizers of today's lecture, of Mr. Hakija Bazi, Program Director, Western Balkans, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, New York, United States, with the title, The Balkans, from Transit Route to an Integral Part of Europe. A special welcome and gratitude goes to our guest from the United States, the acclaimed and highly respected Mr. Abazi. We wish Hakija Bazi a pleasant stay in our institute and wonderful country. Special regards goes to His Excellency Stjepan Mesić, former President of the Republic of Croatia and Honorary President of IFIMES. Mr. Hakija Bazi is the Program Director for the Rockefeller Brothers Fund's Western Balkans program. He has in-depth knowledge and work experience related to the Balkans civil society community and the geopolitics of the region. He developed and implemented a wide range of programs during the transition period and played an important role in the development of civil society in the Western Balkans. In his lecture, Mr. Abazi will discuss the current situations in the Western Balkans and present his view on the future on the region. The lecture will be given in English. It will be followed by a discussion with Mr. Abazi, moderated by my colleague Bahtjar Aljav and myself. And now I give the floor to Mr. Hakija Bazi. Welcome.
Thank you, Ziad. Good afternoon, Mr. President, dear guests. It is an honor to be talking to you. I usually avoid to say that I'm lecturing because I think there is always in the room so much experience and professional background, so it's very hard to come to the frame of me lecturing anyone, but it's a great pleasure to share my thoughts and my ideas, my perspectives, and then engage with you in a discussion that hopefully will leave us, all of us, with a lot and enough thoughts about where we are and how we can individually contribute to a better path for the Western Balkans. So thank you to the Institute for providing this opportunity. I think we tend to say every moment in the Balkans is a historical moment, but critically now, in this sets of the circumstances that we are in, with the European Union being in a position of not necessarily weak, but obviously trying to take itself back after Brexit, elections in the United States where most of the traditional institutes and even individuals did not predict that Trump will become the president of the United States, and the very first actions that we're seeing taking place in the US. And I would say a lot more intense engagement of Russia in the Balkans. It is a historical moment altogether. So allow me from kind of three major actors introduce a traditional actor also to my complex view of the Balkans. And that's the interest and also the presence of the Turkey in the Balkans. So we have pretty much all traditional actors back involved in the Balkans, returning in its full range the geopolitics in the Balkans from the interest of the West, Russia, and Turkey. West being for the first time actually in a path of being split in two, considering the European Union at least a consistent message that has been sent to the Balkans for reintegration, which even though the position right now is that the enlargement is not necessarily going to be an act of accepting new members, the support for the aspiring countries continue in the reforms and the financial sense as well, which is I would say something very, very important and positive trend to be picked up by the Balkans, because if there is one direction, one saving, and one potential overcoming the crisis in the Balkans, it is that light in the end of the tunnel that is called the European Union. With all the potential skepticism, with all potential slow, frustration, painful reforms, I think Balkans has no other future but becoming part of a political map of the European Union. It has been forever part of the geographic map. The question is, will we surprise ourselves, the world, and the global actors this time? So we don't turn Balkans once again a battlefield of a proxy conflicts that we have seen every 30, 50 years coming back to the Balkans, and then selecting individual actors in the Balkans as a proxy to extend and implement the interest of the global actors. And then this question cannot be answered without having a very clear and explicit answer of the leadership of each country of the Western Balkans. And this is where the ambiguity starts a little bit. I think Slovenia is done. It's part of the EU, part of NATO, Croatia as well. The great signal is that Montenegro is slow, but is moving very steadily towards the European Union. It is also in the process of ratifying agreements with NATO to become a member of NATO. Serbia has opened the chapters. Kosovo has signed the Stabilization and Association Agreement. Albania is about to get the invitation. Macedonia is on a stalemate, which I think is also considered one of the key problematic issues. And then we have Bosnia that ends up being the most ambiguous country in the Western Balkans. But I think we still have the critical mass moving towards the European Union, and we still have the critical mass also moving toward NATO. Now, we can discuss how realistic and how fast this process is going to happen. But we should never, in my opinion, question the direction, because that's when we open the space for the other players to use and eventually exploit the potential division in the Balkans as it happened previously in the history and even in the very recent history. My countering of the strategy of splitting the Balkans, which we need to be realistic. It is out there, it is still powerful, is for generation that has lived in last 20 years in peace and in some sort of stability. Not necessarily full stability, but there has been a window of stability presented to the Balkans, should be able to flip the notion of diversity being used as a notion of division and conflict in the Balkans. Ethnic diversity, religious diversity, racial diversity has been always misused by, let's say, a destructive politicians as ways to keep the Balkans apart. While diversity can actually, in this 21st century, turn into the asset, the most valuable asset that the Balkans has. Is it easy? Not. I think United States is one of the examples that has celebrated diversity for centuries, and now that became one of the stumbling blocks into the division for the presidential race. But that doesn't mean that the Balkans will not have the power to celebrate diversity, and we all should be encouraging that, as it is, in my opinion, the comparative advantage of many other sub-regions in the European Union that what we have as a region. Why is it difficult? And how do we actually go about overcoming that difficulty? Let me just remind you where my analysis started about this two scenarios. The scenario number one is what I have just presented to you. Western Balkans moving forward, becoming fully fledged region of the European Union and individually members of NATO. The second scenario is to see a new alliance between the United States and Russia in the Balkans that will return back the power and the influence of the Russian interest in the Balkans. That would move into utilizing and exploiting the division that came as a consequence of disintegration of Yugoslavia, and then established networks, powerful networks from the industry of the war, which then later on was invested to a larger extent into the privatization of the socially and publicly owned enterprises. And this is the phase when these networks are trying to plug themselves into the European and world economy. So returning back the Russian interest in the Balkans, in my view, it's going to create an opportunity for these connections to happen. And it will stop the process of establishing rule of law states and necessary reforms that the European Union requires for states to become members, and for the economies to move from a large portion of a gray economy into the legal economy. This, by default, is going to create clashes in the Balkans, because we do almost know from physical laws that there is a reaction to the attempt of change. The current networks for 15, in some countries even more, have been using the loopholes and the legal weaknesses or the weaknesses of legal system to get rich, to create patronage system, to corrupt the political system and judiciary, and maintain their power over forces that have been trying to pull the region out of the status quo into a dynamic progressive development as part of the path to the European Union. Now, not to dwell more, and I would like to see what kind of questions could potentially be raised by the idea of one side pulling out the West and mostly United States interest that has been invested for decades now in the Balkans, and allowing for new alliance to move in the Balkans. How that will shape itself in a potential new spheres of interest, it is something that it's not even clear to the end of the spectrum for myself, but it's something that I pay attention very, very closely, because we know one thing, that when there was a illegal capital in the Balkans for conflicts and wars has been always great. And militarization of the Balkans has happened. We always ended up in some sort of a conflict between people, which I never believe to this day that it's purely ethnic or religious conflict, but it is wrapped up within the concept of the ethnic and religious, while the underneath it is about the interest, control of resources, and so on and so forth. How do we counter this? I think the leadership in the Balkans remembers very well how costly the war is. Not only on human lives, which we still suffer, we still have missing persons and families that live in agony. We still have the idea of nationalism and fascism perpetuating and taking space from the intellectual world of the Balkans. But also how much it costs for politicians themselves, because most of the people who have been involved in the wars in the Balkans today are not people who are necessarily enjoying the result of their own projections and ideas. A lot of them went through Hague Tribunal, even though some of them returned. I think still there is a lot that they pay in terms of the human consciousness and what it means to actually walk through the dead bodies of the civilians that absolutely had nothing to do with the idea of waging wars. And I think if for anything in the world, the Balkans has paid high cost of trying to create monoethnic states. So that is part of the calculation of anyone who might think that becoming a proxy of anybody would bring good benefits to them or to their nation and the communities in general. That's why I think the potential, and not that I'm happy, of course I'm not happy about what's going on in Turkey and Middle East as well, Egypt, but there is an fortunate situation in a very unfortunate situation. The Adriatic and the coastal line of the Balkans has become a very, very attractive part of the investments, tourists, and development of a new type of ecotourism in the world. Maintaining stability, maintaining stable path to European Union would mean that the Adriatic and the coastal area of the Balkans will be even more attractive, even more an engine of economic development for the Balkans. There is a huge opportunity for us to use the energy sector based on renewables and replace in a smooth, very slow but smooth process the traditional lignite power plant, lignite energy-based energy sector that very often has been part of the conflict, with a new technology that employs a lot more people, with a technology that does not destroy the environment and doesn't take the drinkable water from people, but rather uses the renewable resources throughout the region in order to supply the coastal area, but also share that with the continental part of the Balkans, which has also great potential to develop an economy that is eco-friendly economy. We should forget about factories of 3,000, 5,000 employees, heavy industry in the world. I think we need to reorient to what traditional unique comparative advantages of the Balkans are. Organic food production, tourism in the mountains, the idea of light industry, the IT technology, using the skills and knowledge and abilities of the young population of the Balkans in order to serve the global economy from the high-tech industries as well. One among the best engineers in the world used to come from this part of the world, and I think we need to go back there to use the brains and the knowledge of our people in order to, one, complement the industry and the ecotourism on the other side, and second, create hubs of knowledge in the Balkans that will serve to the European market, but why not to the global markets as well. Only by projecting this positive vision for the Balkans that is based on equality, that is for the first time in history looks to shift from subordination to partnership, but real true partnership. We don't need to have centers, neither in Belgrade or Zagreb or Tirana. We need to have centers of partnership. And I think the Berlin process is slowly introducing the concept of a new partnership, an alliance that is based on the idea of progressive move of the Balkans rather than on having centers of power that try to subordinate others in the Balkans, which again by default creates dissatisfaction of people as they get marginalized in the process of the EU integration. I think that at least the minimum sustainable way of establishing new model of economic system will create enough independence for fresh blood to come into the politics. With all the respect, I think we need shift in mentality and the conceptual thinking on how we use politics in the Balkans. 10, 15 years before collapse of Yugoslavia, now for 20 years after, we use politics as tools of getting rich and creating patronage political system. We need to go back to use politics as art of solutions and providing vision and prosperity for the people. That is not going to happen with people who are part of the problem. We need people who have been always trying to provide solutions, or people who are ready to move into the political system with new ideas that have a certain level of standards and move way out of the idea of solving problems through 150 characters on the tweet, and provide a fake, false notion that you can solve issues at social, political, or economic sectors with one pager. So Balkans needs to move from the idea of all benefit from the state as much as you can. It needs to move from a fake, failed, what I call failed Marshall Plan of international community post-war, which was based on one pager, into a full-blown real politics that is based on participatory democracy and engagement of citizens in the system. Now, you can ask questions of where am I leaving the divisions between different countries. I'm talking about the average citizen. The average citizen in the Balkans has been treated equally by all the governments. Average Serb, average Albanian, average Macedonian, and average Croat has been facing, and Bosniak, has been facing the difficulty to secure normal life. So the question has been, do you follow the nationalistic rhetoric, or do you actually go back and ask for accountability and transparency of your own government? Unfortunately, we have not been able still to move and create the critical mass at the national level to demand accountability, transparency, and good governance, as we have been still swimming in the waters of, yes, we are in a difficult situation, but let's be silent because the neighbors are actually being happy for us not being able to move. I think that needs to change as well. All these average citizens are pretty much in the same state. Everybody wants to get out of the Balkans. 526,000 Macedonians left in less than 4 years. 1/3 of population left Macedonia. Over 100,000 left Kosovo in 2015. It's hard to measure how many left Serbia because of the visa liberalization and access to the market in Europe and elsewhere. So we're losing a big battle, the battle of bringing. All young, bright, good people of the region are leaving. We're going to, if we continue with the same discourse and approach to politics, we're going to end up with an empty region, a region that basically does not have capacity to think and work for itself. And I don't think that's the vision of anybody. We cannot afford to have Balkan that crazy heads have been fighting for decades to be an empty, underdeveloped region because of the stubbornness of several people who are benefiting from an established political system that we inherited as part of the chaos created after the war. Now, conceptually, we also can put this into the blame of the international community, including European Union. There was a moment when we thought that by bringing United Nations and European Union missions, the Balkans is going to look different. Unfortunately, we forgot one thing, which is the paradigm of the Balkans, that nobody's going to come and take care of your own business. You cannot expect others to come and clean our trash, and we cannot expect others to come and fix our economies. We cannot expect judges from European Union and the United States to come and arrest our criminals across the region. But we kept hoping that that's going to be the case, because it's easy, because we thought somebody else is going to do it for us. And for international networks that have been involved and benefiting from the status quo and lack of development, it was also very convenient to keep the Balkans as a corridor, as a transition for everything. The South Stream is going to be built, no it's not, and then TAP is going to be built, AMBO is going to be built. There were so many projects that were being built without any proper participation of people and interests of the Balkans. So I'm glad that most of them kind of failed. Because it does create the space for the vision I was taking and talking about. If major pipelines would fail, then we would have time to create a renewable energy sector and sustainable energy sector. We need to go back to the energy efficiency and properly do the living standards for the citizens. We cannot allow for the Balkans to become yet again a place that everybody benefits but nobody cares for. That's why we called it from a corridor to a integral part of the European Union. We cannot be part of the European Union fully if we're not competitive region, if we have not built our own economy. And individually, each state is very small to be able to create a sustainable economic system. But together, which will make around 30 to 35 million people, it will be an attractive, viable market. It will make a viable economy that can compete with the other sub-regions in the European Union. And as naive as it might sound, if we look into the model of the Nordic countries, 50, 60 years ago, they were in the same relationship Balkan countries are today. They fought each other, they disagreed. Everybody believed that on a self-isolation and control, their economy is going to be doing better. But this very small group of people got together and actually figured out that having an integrated energy sector among the Scandinavian countries, Nordic countries, you will be better off than trying to build the entire capacity for yourself. Having a market with the Nordic countries, it will make them more competitive with the other European regions. So from that hate and division, they came together around initially a very pure economic interest. And then that led to the education, higher education being integrated, having the rule of law cooperating among the countries, and then presenting somewhat a unified brand in the European Union. I believe that Balkan can have and will have a very strong brand if the leaders recognize how much better off they will be if they would present a unified market for the Balkans. Not to present a unrealistic, we were having outside this short, frustrating conversation. I know it can go very bad. We're very realistic about it. It takes 1%, 2% of the population to present a scenario of war and conflict again. But the question is, in 2017, are we not smarter than we used to be? Can we, the 95%, present a different vision for the Balkans? Can we have enough mobilization to prevent a scenario that will not benefit anyone in the end? Even if Trump is not going to care about the Balkans, even if Europe is going to have enough problem for itself, can we mobilize intellectual capacity of the Balkans to create a Balkan agenda that will counter any try, any attempt to present the Balkans yet again as another battlefield for a clashing interest at the global level? And I strongly believe we can, but we need to be fast, we need to not be shy, and we need to kind of start forgetting that by being better off only for yourself is the only reason why we should care and be involved in the public discourse. Because I don't think we can completely excuse ourselves of empowering the right wing in the European Union, empowering the right wing in the United States. We did do something not right by creating a space where they could come into the market. I think 9/11 and then the wars in the Middle East and the whole notion of projecting new enemy, which continues to be the enemy of religion, and us embracing or silently accepting the notion of painting with a white brush one religion against the other, one religion against the entire West, puts us on the blame as well. There is no enough media, there is no enough social engagement, there is no enough power that is standing on the fundamental values and principles of democracy in Europe, in the United States, or elsewhere. And I don't think anybody knows better than us what it means to become a refugee. But when the refugees started coming from the Middle East, we turned pretty silent in supporting them, because we were all afraid that we are somehow going to be blamed for supporting terrorists. We forgot that actually who was leaving Syria was the democratic Syria. Refugees were presenting those people who did not accept the dictatorial, autocratic rule of Assad. And therefore they decided to move towards places where they feel close. European Union, for better life, freedom of speech, and so on. But we kind of, not Balkans per se only, but the entire so-called social democratic liberal world, left them alone. Left them drowning in the oceans, being refugees all over Europe, and being treated unfairly for their beliefs and their convictions. So, silently admitting this type of behavior, including those multilateral institutions that are made to protect and defend human rights, the rights of refugees, makes us also take some part of the guilt about what has happened with the fabric of societies and the political landscape in the Europe and in the Balkans as well. I want to end by saying that my hope is very simplistic, that Germany doesn't fall into the hands of a Trump-type approach, or what we could potentially see what French approach is going to be into the politics. Because if there is one driving positive progressive engine in Europe, it's Germany right now, that clearly and explicitly has made clear that the fundamental principles, norms, and values of a social democratic or just democratic society can be actually more important than how much votes one politician can take in the next elections. Thank you, and I'll be happy if I have triggered any of the thinking in your thoughts, and I look forward to our joint discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Abbasi, and I would like to ask Mr. Rada to start the discussion.
Thank you, Ziad. My first question is the engagement of Russia in the Balkans. Are we waiting or now really facing a new Yalta II? It is the interest zones between Russia, United States, and Turkey. Because in Yalta I, you have Russia, United Kingdom, and United States. This is you think that is a kind of legalization of the Russian presence here in the Balkans, because they are here, not they are coming, they are here. But now, I think with the American policy, we are facing a new Yalta II. Your opinion about this?
So, I think you're right. Russians are here, and in a free market economy and an open space, I think anyone should be welcomed in the Balkans, including Russia and China. I think the question is, do we play by the rules? And will the Russians play by the rules? When I said that the Balkans has a unique opportunity of shifting historically from creating alliances for war to creating an alliance for peace, it's exactly that. The guarantor of that can be nobody else, not even the United States, but the European Union. NATO as well, being the only defense security umbrella for the European Union. Combined together, I think we'll have to make Russia, Chinese, Indians, Brazilians, and everybody else play by certain rules. Now, the rules will be banned only if we have bad leadership in the Balkans. This mistake has been done over and over again. That's why I think that these discussions like this, and also media discussions in each of the countries, should demand from the leaders of the Balkans, from every single individual country, to reinforce the rules of engagement in the Balkans, which are rules set by the European Union and should not be compromised. The moment we start compromising these rules at the very individual level, because we do see a short-term benefit from it, in the long run we are risking not only the stability and security of the Balkans, but I think we're risking the entire European Union project. And that is why, on the other side, we need European Union to engage directly with what potentially could be the new projection of Russia and United States in the Balkans. Now, I have to say that US has not been engaged for the last 10 years actively in the Balkans. Is that fortunate or unfortunate? That is something to be discussed. There are many people who think that's a good thing that US has not been here present. I believe that unfinished business in Bosnia and Herzegovina and unfinished business in Kosovo, unfortunately, did not bring the Balkans to the very solid position to be able to protect its interests. But again, we cannot go back into the history and accelerate back the process of creating development, because status quo and stability was pretty much the notion with which we have existed here. Now, if I'm allowed to analyze the behavior and approach of President Putin, it doesn't give you much hope. Crimea, engagement in Syria, engagement in South Ossetia and Abkhazia before, the patterns are not very promising. Yet again, I think a joint alliance of Balkan countries for peace and a partnership with the European Union, the damage and the prevention can happen by allowing a very fair, square engagement of Russians into the open, free market economy of the Balkans.
The second question maybe is not connected directly to Balkans, but because Balkan is a part also of Europe. I think yesterday, Mr. Verhofstadt, the former Prime Minister of Belgium, and now the coordinator of the European Union for Brexit, he said that Europe is facing three threats. It means terrorism, Russia, and China. He didn't say United States, but Donald Trump is the third threat. How you can now translate this or to explain this, that Trump or the policy of Donald Trump is a threat toward Europe and maybe as well as it is Balkan?
I
because
think
it's not only the Baltics, and because I think he thinks about Ukraine or Baltics, but here we have the Balkans also.
I mean, it's hard to know what he was thinking when he said that sitting in Brussels. Very hard. But let's try to unpack. I think the statements of Trump, President Trump, in walking out of the multilateral agreements in the world, is threat to the European Union because there is no united front in terms of the implementation of the multinational, multilateral agreements. Second threat is the NATO. EU does depend on NATO protection and NATO approach. The statements from President Trump that NATO is obsolete and it's not going to continue to support NATO at the level of funding that U.S. has been funding, it's something that should worry Brussels. But that's not a bad thing. I think it's a question of window of opportunity. If the consequences of engagement of such policy are going to be quick, then it's very hard to see. But after all, European Union should think about itself and should create policies, but also mechanisms to defend itself beyond dependency of the United States. And I think this is a wake-up call, including for UK, for a unified European Union, not only to defend its own interests, but also to defend the interests of the democratic world around the world. Because if, let's say, the scenario of the United States is going to be self-isolation or protectionism or role that will be bringing Russia and the United States closer, I think the world will look towards Brussels and Berlin and London to preserve the norms of democratic societies. And progressively, even though World War II was that moment where Europe had lost its standing in terms of the values, I think in the last 50, 60 years, Europe has returned back and has the intellectual capacity to regain the power of steering the progressive agenda in the world. And that's why I think it's good that the thinking, both intellectually and politically, in Europe is going towards demanding a lot more role for European Union. Now, let me say something about terrorism, because I did touch upon it, but I think it's a very critical factor here in the Balkans as well. I understand when events happen and states have to react. Like 9/11 happened, Afghanistan happened, Iraq happened after that. There are attacks in European capitals, and then countries' security sector needs to react, of course. Terrorism is a horrible thing. But terrorism of individuals, even groups, cannot terrorize the intellectual mind of Europeans and Americans. And this is what has happened. We have allowed for terrorism not to be fearful of public squares and explosions, but has terrorized the brain of the Western world by opening it to a point where fear has been inserted. And looking at the room here, you all remember how Yugoslavia started to disintegrate through notion of fear, through the idea that you need to protect yourself from the others, because the others are different, because the others are trying to do something bad to you. I did write a piece of paper a few months back about this. In every single corner of the United States, you had one thing after 9/11. If you see something, say something. On the stairs of the school, on the bus station, on the metro, on the public spaces, on the conferences, if you see something, say something. What does that mean? That is a call for citizens to be completely subordinated by a political agenda. So the free mind, the free spirit started to be framed within the idea of fear. I don't think such a sophisticated, developed societies like in the United States and Europe should be nurturing its people with the fear. Because fear always produces a reaction that is not acceptance of the others, that excludes the others and starts creating mistrust, not only towards each other, but towards the states too. So I think fundamentally what we're seeing 15 years on in nurturing the idea of fear is the deep mistrust of the people towards the system, including those that are designed to protect people into the frame. On the other side, we're seeing rise of the idea of militarization of societies and securitization of societies, where industries for protecting, defending, even creating an industry of cybersecurity is emerging as the only way of defending the interest of human beings. And I think that is a very, very dangerous theory that we have come to, and if perpetuated further, it will further damage the relationship in Europe and the United States as well.
My last question is keeping the peace or keeping the status quo, this peace in the Balkans. It's very important to invest in the economy. If you think about Turkey, they have their internal problems. They can't invest in the region. They can invest 10 millions or 20 millions, but not 100 millions. If you go to Russia, also, because if you could look to the economy of Russia, the GPD of Spain is more than Russia. It means the biggest than the GPD of Russia. How you can not to explain that, how you think about the China, the investment of China or the Americans to invest? If you look to, I hear this in Ankara, I think during one conference regarding the investment of the United States in the Balkans. If you look, the first thing is to have direct flights to the Balkans. And we haven't now direct flights from the Balkan countries to the United States.
So I'm always in favor of unlocking the capacities in the Balkans first. I think a lot of capacities are still locked and are held by the bottlenecks that have been created as a result of the political patronage. I have to be very honest that there are interested investors, diaspora investments, even domestic investments that are blocked by the political structures in the Balkans. Because everything has to go through a small door of influence of a certain politician in order to be able to invest. That has created a situation where economy is not developing at the speed and the way it should be developing. Now, of course somebody's going to say that, yes, also in Europe you need to have connections and you need to use the networks of powerful networks in order to be able to invest. I think that's a big question, because the level of the scrutiny, or better say bureaucracy, in the Balkans when it comes to investment, it's much, much higher than anywhere else. Captured judiciary, where investor is afraid to invest its capital, his or her capital, because the cases can take forever, as the judiciary is fully influenced by the political system. It discourages investments. So your question is, nobody, no good capital, no clean capital is going to come to the Balkans as long as there is not going to be a guarantee for at least free and fair judiciary system. So far, our economies have been fueled and nurtured from donors and money from international community, and eventually bad capital, with exceptions, but mostly bad capital. Capital that we don't ask where the origin comes from. But for capital that is coming from countries that accountability, business ethics are applied, it's very, very little. So I don't know if we are interested to open to a bad capital even more, because we might end up in a criminalized economy that coexists with the political system even within the European Union. In that case, I think we will see even bigger gap between the rich and the poor. And we're not interested for societies and countries that diminishes or intentionally creates conditions for middle class to disappear. I think contrary, we need societies and rules and procedures and capital that allows for middle class to widen and to get people out of the extreme poverty. I know I'm not answering to your question directly, but I think we need to unlock capacity here. We need to use resources of the Balkans wisely. We need to invite a good capital to come in by guaranteeing them that there is free and fair judiciary system in place.
Today, Russia, Prashant, Ambassador Albania.
Ambassador of Albania. Thank you very much for your explanations and the lecture. I would have a little question, perhaps I'll make a comment. You talked about the Balkans, the developments and the other issues, but at the end we have to reflect and realize there is a vacuum in our democracies, in the Western Balkans. You mentioned all the countries, but we see during the last year we did have many occasions that this nationalistic approach came to us much more stronger than before. And in some of the cases we see or we listen or we follow other people and even the public surveys that people, the population of the Balkans, they do not want anymore another case of war. Is this because of the political elites in our countries? Do they like that approach just for internal purposes? Or it is something more than that? Can you make a comment on that?
I think my short answer is that we do have a political class across with little nuances that has failed to provide a vision for development. And when you don't have a vision, you go back usually to what you know the best. And what we know the best is the rhetoric of nationalism, on showing the muscles, being the strong man, which kind of has an appeal to the general population internally. But I think the case of Kumanovo in Macedonia, when there were 60,000 Albanians and Macedonians protesting against bad governance and bad behavior, mismanagement of resources, and then the government kind of, in an old way, staged an inter-ethnic conflict in Kumanovo to shift the attention from the public squares of Skopje. In which case we had around 20 people dead in that attack, both from the Albanian side and the Macedonian side. But what happened the very next day? The very next day, both Macedonians and Albanians citizens were protesting again against bad governance, which is an important indicator that citizens are not buying any more of the nationalistic rhetorics and an infused inter-ethnic conflict. Yes, it was horrible what happened in Kumanovo, but people did not go to take up the arms and start an Albanian-Macedonian conflict. So we should use that. I think even the rhetoric between Croatia and Serbia right now, it's for political consumption. I don't think the average Croat and average Serb wants to see again a conflict between the two neighbors. Now, is it possible to happen? Yes, it is. I think even a normal person, if you drink 15 espressos per day, by the end of the day you can be a little bit going to the other side. So if we keep fueling and nurturing the idea of nationalism, you will always find that 1% that is ready to do something. But right now, I think the general population still remembers how costly and how expensive it is to get involved in the war. Though I have to give credit to few leaders in the Balkans, that the message has been lowering the tensions, trying to be a lot more cautious. I think the incident with the train in Kosovo showed that there is capacity to actually cool down the heads and not go into the extreme actions. We just need more of those messages into the public discussion. Nobody benefits from the war. Nobody is going to benefit from the conflict. We will all be losers, and there will be greater losers if something happens in the next period that will interrupt with the European and NATO integration of the Balkans.
Next question. Stadium Prashania. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Lily Schwartz. I'm the Director of the Data Council. Thank you very much for your very useful and comprehensive analysis. I'd like to maybe take a step back to looking at some massive practical, specific political issues, perhaps a more esoteric question or problem, something that was a big theme in your speech, and that is a recurring theme in basically every forum and every platform recently discussing the Balkan situation. And that is this idea, at least if I have discerned from the speech correctly, of a switch, a shift from the mentality of entitlement to the mentality of taking stock in our own present and future. And I think the discussion here perhaps almost becomes a bit psychological. Again, in every forum and platform I've recently been, it almost seems like we are analyzing and diagnosing the patient from a mental health perspective. There's a discussion of the fear of the insecurities, the sensation of lack of empowerment, basically all these sensations that are present both with the moving population and the leadership. And it seems that in the Balkans, probably as much as in many other places, particularly Europe right now, we have on the one hand the population expects, blames, and feels entitled to receive something from the leaders as well as from the external actors. And at the same time, the leadership seems to be having the same sentiment towards the population and towards the external actors. And you have said yourself, we have to move from this mentality of expecting something from others and doing something ourselves. But of course here you have this, what to me seems a complete falling apart, complete decay of the system of values, which runs back into the old society we seem to have had, whether or not it was genuine or purely rhetorical, political, but at least that was the sensation of certain values, like such as solidarity, integrity, and so on and so forth. Right now, it seems like everyone has lost. We lack strong leaders. We lack leaders with integrity. We lack leaders with a clear vision on national levels, but then at the same time, we lack any sort of coordinated vision among the nations in the region. And of course, on the other hand, like you said, there's this population that suffers from that, but also fuels this type of politics that essentially is clean, or to simply said giving up. So this seems to be a common denominator of all the discussions in the Western Balkans. What I'm constantly missing, and myself being blamed for not being able to provide the national as well, but perhaps you have some idea of how to tackle these issues, where to start, and let's say we do have limited resources. And I feel personally we have a very limited time that doing something, making a change is absolutely urgent if we are to reverse this trend and be able to save what can be saved. So if you have if you have one advice, where would one start? Would one start with the leadership, trying to shape the structure, the institutions? Because there have been so many projects in attempt doing that, but it's all seems to be failing. This top-down approach doesn't seem to be working. The bottom-up approach is really effective. In choosing between these two paths, where would you start? How would you guide us to move forward?
Thank you. Balkan is not an exception. I mean, just go back and review the electoral campaign in the United States, and you will find exactly those terms of, introducing rhetorics and vocabulary that has never been seen and heard in the American discussions. But to go back here, I think what helped to move people from a collective solidarity, humanistic approach to the development and engaging with one another was the idea of a post-conflict approach from international community. And I really truly believe that we became a machine of burning money and burning projects, which allowed for pockets of society to completely detach themselves from the real development. We were all focused on one thing. We became the one-pager people. And then when we saw that this is not really going toward where it should be, which meant to go back to a strong education system, a responsible doctor, to a political class that feels accountable towards the voters, then we turn into the survival mode. Let's try to survive. Everybody was trying to survive. Everybody is trying to survive today. Because that long-term vision has been not really engaging with the citizens. That's why when I say if the economy is the basis of stability and development, and let's say we're pretty sure that's the case because we need education system, we need health system, we need pension system, and those things don't come without economy. It has to go back to the local economic development. It has to go to the resources and the ideas that we have had forever in consolidating at least the minimum functionality of society. You cannot be dependent on the monopolies, and that's what we have created. We have sold everything in a privatization process to big companies, and they basically either maintain certain level of employment for their interest, or they buy and they collapse the industry because they need from somewhere else to import goods into the places. This is not a sustainable economic development. This is the way to marginalize the people that need to live and have jobs and have prosperity and create family and have a proper society to live in. So to me, the answer is very, very clear. Let's go back to the community. Let's go back to the local economic development. When you have strong, independent communities that do not depend on the political rhetorics or on some big monopoly corporate interest that will only be interested once in 4 years. When you need to vote and for them to translate the vote as influence with the political class. Our democracies have been reduced to one day, and that's the election day. You cannot have functional democracies if you are a factor only one day, even less, a couple of hours. You go to vote, that's it. For 4 years, you're not part of society anymore. So when we talk about system of values, they don't come, they don't restore themselves by themselves. We need to engage back. We need to engage in a real civil society approach. We cannot believe that NGOism that has been implanted is going to take care of the checks and balances mechanism around our region. And maybe we can. We still have that luxury to say we can because we still have a very vital population in the Balkans. Or at least I'm very optimistic still.
Are there any questions?
Lahko v slovenskem jeziku nevladni diplomat, gospod Gajšek, imate vprašanje.
I'm Zinka Junfa. I was born in Yugoslavia. I was a manager in a big company in Yugoslavia. I studied in the United States. I worked in Iraq and in Jordan. And I agree 100% with what you said. Let's restore our morality and our values. And do not engage for everything NGOs, but let's see the good companies to restore them because they work abroad. We have a very, very good software. We have a lot, I'm working on the international project financing, so I work a lot with you also. And let's help our each of our countries to restore the values and to be profitable, you know. Not just because in our country they think if somebody is from own country, he does not do not know nothing. But if he speaks German, French, and English, then he is a big chef and big fellow. And this is not good with our country. So I appreciate everybody who is here, and I would like that our universities they go forward like American universities, and they do make a good practice for some export-import companies, like I don't know which. If I say some companies, maybe will be wrong, but I will say some big companies which we have, Metana, SCT, Primoria, and so on. They were working in 40 countries. Don't tell me that they are all stupid and they don't know nothing, because they have been for the 60 years or 40 years on the ground, you know. And I agree, you must just come to our countries, you, your company, everybody can be each of banking company, and just tell them how to do it if they don't know how to do it. I think, I mean, what I say, let's be optimistic and help each other, you know? Not say for everybody, he is not good, he is not good, he is not. I respect everybody here. Mr. Binning, Mr. Mesic, Mr. Chirovic, Mr. Ajak, Mr. Madam Kampan and me. I don't know how to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gospod Gaš, ja, gospod Mrkov.
Jaz bom slovensko.
Ja.
Danes sem se pel s prijateljem Pifarjem, ki je jako brl. In me vprašal, ti smo se peli. In sem mu rekel, veš kaj, grem na ifimes na predavanje po Balkanu kot tranzicijski poti in kot delu Evrope. Jako Vrag je, bom rekel, odličen tipar, drugi je Mirsan Dedič, oba sta pa Balkanca. In potem je Jakov me pregledal za glavo, rekel, imam jaz vročino. Skratka, kaj mi je hotel povedati? Povedati mi je hotel, da je Balkan danes tako močna tema v svetu, ne samo v Evropi, ki je lahko spet sok slednika, kot je bil prvi svetovni vojni. In hotel mi je povedati, da bi se morali Balkanom nekako spoprijati. Jaz sem odvrnil, da Balkan ni samo geografska, pojmovna zveza, ampak da je to tudi sevda, da so to tudi čevati, da je to baklave, da so to, sem povedal, tudi cirilica, da je Balkan pravzaprav tudi že v srcu Evrope na začetku bil, kaj se je svetima bratom razumeli metodo, osnova Evrope, kot to danes pojmujemo. Skratka, ne smemo si misliti, da je Balkan nekje daleč. Balkan, kot ga jaz sam tudi poznam, da sem pač bil velik prijatelj kot pisatelj z vsemi književniki od Beograda do Bosne in tako dalje, do Vištine in tako dalje. Balkan je skratka neko jedro, ki ga pa še danes Evropa odkriva. Še nekaj bi dodal, pogledam včasih Avstrijo, sem ugotovil, da se tudi Avstrija danes balkanizira. Ne gre za veki seraja, kot je časa Mozarta, ampak se tudi Evropa, če si hočemo priznati, ne, se balkanizira. In tudi celo politiki. Saj ne bom analiziral, ker prav dobro poznam to situacijo, kako se balkanizira, in ko sem se pogovarjal vsaj s avstrijskimi nekaterimi kolegi pisatelji, so mi to potrdili. In to, da se balkanizira v dobrem smislu, ne v negativnem smislu korupcije, potem despotizma in tako dalje. Skratka, obstaja Balkan, ki postaja pravzaprav evropsko vprašanje in tudi svetovno vprašanje. In tudi bi bilo dobro mogoče gospoda ministra Donalda Trumpa vprašati, ali bi on pišel malo mene Čevapčiče in mene Čevapčiče Melanje. Skratka, nismo tako udali, ko ste vi. Oprostite, da sem tako, moral sem povedati iz srca, poznati sem.
Well, in your excellent introduction to this discussion, you mentioned several countries or superpowers, I would say, like Russia, United States, and then European Union. And I detected somehow in the undertone that how important can their influence could be in the Balkans. So, if I understood correctly, could that be that they could be outside saviors of the Balkans? I doubt it. But anyway, recently I read an article by former British diplomat Timothy Less in Foreign Affairs Review. And he said that it's very utopian idea or illusion to think that multi-ethnic states could survive in the Balkans. And as a solution, he suggested that creation of great Serbia, great Croatia, and great Albania would be the answer to the problem. I can expect your answer to this idea. But I would go then also to some positive side, which was already mentioned by the lady here sitting next to me. That we should really approach the whole situation mentally as well as practically in the way how to really to improve our business connections and so on. And I think that it's very, very, maybe it's not bad to think about something which is still a sort of theoretical project of the European Union. It's the project of macro regions. And maybe we could use this project in practice more than anything else. I mean, macro regions can be sort of very, very nice and not aggressive sort of approach and connection among all countries, let's say in the Balkans, Adriatic Ionian macro region, which includes members of the European Union as well as non-members of the European Union. And so that maybe we could use this project as a sort of good source for more sort of more positive way of doing something in the way of trying to improve the situation mentally as well as and above all economically and later on politically as well. But I would like to hear your comment on Timothy Less.
I mean, clearly, I think the notion of greater, it's a scary notion in the Balkans, but it's a scary notion everywhere. And I think what I would encourage Les to think is what will happen day after. You have greater Serbia, greater anything. What is going to happen next day after? I think when Brits woke up the day after Brexit, they realized, first of all, they started to Google what the European Union is. And then they realized what it means to be out of an institution that has provided access to the market, jobs, flow of the capital, and so on. I think the world that is based on isolation is over. I think only minds that do not believe on cooperation, partnership, and humanity can think to create projects, be it political projects or any other, that are not natural. Those would be artificial creations. Now, that doesn't mean that people, different ethnic groups that live in different states should not have full rights. That's why I was calling about Alliance for Peace based on equality and justice. So the idea of greater states in the Balkans comes actually from this proxy approach to the Balkans. The only happy institutions will be those who try to manipulate and take the resources out of the Balkans. I'm convinced about it. That would be a project that would make it easier for interests of outside people or outside groups to be implemented in the Balkans. Nobody would benefit from another war or artificial project of creating greater or rearranging the maps of the Balkans. Now, will it in 50, 60 years have a natural evolution, as it was Czechs and Slovaks, for example? I mean, Prague was an Austrian city back then. Today is in Czech Republic. So what's the big deal? The idea is that the world has that treasury in hand, and it hasn't been destroyed. So I don't think this notion of multi-ethnic societies to be dead should be as much given any credence, because even if it happens, even if it's real, day after we will have needs for each other. And we have seen that. Even the last war in Yugoslavia, the organized crime, the trade of guns and fuel was exactly happening between the opposition parties. They were selling guns to each other. They were selling fuel to each other. They were benefiting from the industry of the war. But, you know, let's once forever try to get leadership in the Balkans that is player at the global stage and not necessarily thieves of our neighborhoods. Because this is how I call politicians of the Balkans, who get rich by stealing tenders and money from hospitals and schools. They're thieves of neighborhoods. They're not global players. Once upon a time, this region knew how to play with a global market, where you produce and then you export. And then the import is also balanced with what the bilateral or multilateral relations will do. Today, we are filled with thieves of neighborhoods. That's why there are kids dying in the hospitals because of lack of medication. There are people sleeping in the streets because they don't have housing. The professors are unpaid and so on and so forth. Or the old generation is suffering for pensions because somebody needs to be rich and have fat accounts as a political animal. That time has to come to an end. But it will not unless we go back to empowering communities from where they are. Because I don't want to call it working class, but citizens should be empowered to be an actor of society. It cannot be just a consumer. Right now, we treat citizen as a consumer, full stop. That is not a guarantee of a functional democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Abazi. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and discussion as much as I did. I would like to thank Mr. Abazi for his contribution to better understanding of global world, United States, Western Balkans, and European Union. And I would like to invite you to our next lecture, round the table, 27 February, New American Policy. This lecture, Dr. Srđan Kerin, Foreign Minister of Macedonia, Budimir Lončar, last Minister of SFRJ, Dr. Ernest Petrić, a member of International Law Commission and former President of the Constitutional Court of Slovenia, and Dr. Vladimir Marinković, Vice President of National Assembly of Republic of Serbia. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.